Welcome back. In our last segment, we went through the dangers to our politics and to our nation if our split political and media bubbles continue on. And not only are Trump supporters seeking sources inside the bubbles that confirm their beliefs, they're also rejecting any sources that do not, which, since Fox News called Arizona for Biden on election night, includes Fox News apparently. Their favorability rating dropped 13 points among Republicans since November 3rd. Now, instead, more and more Republicans are turning to alternative sources like Newsmax, One American News, and online sources. Now, even though those outlets fully admit they're not giving their audiences the truth.
There's a lot of opinion hosts, and they have all sorts of things that I don't subscribe to. I do believe in free discourse. I believe in people having their opinion. We're not saying that that is accurate.
So it's called news, but it's not accurate. Online, conservatives are moving away from Facebook and Twitter as their unfounded election complaints get labeled with deserved warnings. And they're heading for a service called Parler. Well, our next guest has been studying those trends as more and more Trump backers are moving into even more insulated media bubbles, frankly, on the outright fringe. Shannon McGregor, she's a professor in the School of Journalism and Media at the University of North Carolina. And Shannon, we always knew that line, like everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own set of facts. How naive that sounds, particularly after the last 4 years. But you don't seem to be as worried that with the advent of Parler drawing people away necessarily from Twitter or Facebook, or even, with the Newsmaxes going even farther than we even seen the Foxes. You think there's a point here where the audience will only get so large? You don't think we're looking at a brand new paradigm shift?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think that this app in particular, Parler, is going to be the new Facebook or the new Twitter, and that having no content moderation is the future of social media platforms. That doesn't mean there's not a danger to the warning signs I think we see of people flocking to, this really fractured information environment. That is still worrisome, but I don't think we're going to see it to the level, of some of the other social media apps in terms of the millions or even billions of people joining them.
And if I got it right, Shannon, you think it's because people like to spoil for a fight, and they also want to have, as big a megaphone as they are. And if you're just talking to the converted and it's not getting big media exposure, the appeal certainly for, bold-faced names isn't going to be as much. But haven't we seen that in many ways? What, particularly Fox News for 4 years was, with limited exceptions, that they were basically preaching to the converted and they liked it.
Yeah, for sure. But what we see with Fox News is it's still very reactionary. There has to be some mainstream media or some liberal sort of person in the news to be the object of their ire, right? To be the object of their outrage. And so even though they're sort of preaching to the converted, as you say it, there's still this sort of interaction between more mainstream media and Fox News just in what they tend to cover. But I don't think that we're going to see, like you say, these bold-faced names leaving apps like Twitter anytime soon, because Twitter is where the journalists are. And even for more sort of regular folks who might, lean towards more conservative and download an app like Parler, there's, as you said, there's no one to spar with. And we know that's part of it.
When I look at what Parler is proudly doing, is they're giving a platform for folks like QAnon. You got white supremacist groups, you've got the Proud Boys, etc. The Stop the Spread, which was banned on Twitter and Facebook. They got their own basically runway over there. How worried should we be that with zero mitigation, I'm too exhausted to have fights with folks that, there's good, legitimate things we should have debates on in this country. But if you listen to the Bartiromo interview of the president this past weekend and you have a whole basic platform dedicated to some of that nonsense, won't people give up even arguing and we'll basically live in two totally different worlds under the same, country? Isn't that the inevitable consequence? And isn't that terrible for a republic?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should be worried not that these people who are flocking to an app like Parler aren't going to get other information. I think that they will, but we should be worried that they're choosing to opt into a social media site where they know they're likely only to get information that confirms their worldview. And that's worrisome, right? That's people moving away from having a conversation, across political divides, even if it's an argument, and moving into this sort of safe space where they know there's only going to be information that affirms their worldview. And I think, in terms of what we should be worried about, I'm really worried about the radicalization that might happen. Again, this is not something that's going to happen at some broad scale, but all it takes is for one person to be radicalized by some of these violent extremist movements like the Proud Boys. And if there's violence that results from that, then that's one person too many.
Do you see a place where we can ever get to a basic agreement on facts? I know some of the social media, the bigger players were forced, some more begrudgingly than others, to do some fact checking. But will we have a place where, as it was, not that long ago, where we could at least agree on the outline of the basic set of facts, and then we can reach our own conclusions about where we go? Is that day long gone? That'll never come back? And to achieve something like that, you really got to get into the part of censorship? Or can we have at least a basic starting point?
I do have hope that there will be, some world in the future, some country of ours in the future where we can have a set of shared values. But I think what that's going to take is for us to agree on some convictions, some moral convictions of what is right and what is wrong. And we still see that the country is really polarized along those lines, And so it's hard then to have some shared set of facts if we can't have even some shared sense of things that are right or are wrong, or that are true or that are not true.
Is maybe the way to get there the almighty buck? Because I remember, when Glenn Beck maybe had his highest audience share, but then there was the pushback where advertisers didn't want to attach their name to his program. And I have a bunch of other examples also to that same vein, that if the money doesn't flow in, then it doesn't matter how many folks you want. Alex Jones is never going to be able to make enough money, I guess, with the exception of, subscribership payments, that it's worth it. Is maybe that the right way to target this? That stop the flow of money, and maybe you stop the, at least, proliferation of the content?
I mean, I think we've seen that work in some cases, right? With the ad boycott against Facebook over the summer, in the wake of their inaction around President Trump's posts about when the looting starts, the shooting starts. But again, this is, counting on companies and corporations to do the right thing, right? In terms of not putting their ad dollars in a space that they don't recognize as being good or something that they want their brand associated with. Or when we look at apps like Parler, when the base is so small that they're not going to be able to garner a big advertising base in terms of, selling and monetizing user information in the way that larger apps like Facebook and Instagram, with their much larger user bases, can actually sell them that data.
Interesting. Shannon McGregor, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And up next, COVID unchecked and out of control. We've got the frightening new numbers, the latest when it comes to vaccines, and the stories that need retelling. What doctors are seeing inside COVID hospitals, including deniers who insist COVID is just a hoax, as they're being admitted and even intubated.